Welcome back to the Tombola Research webinar series. Today, I'm especially excited because we have a special guest here. I know you can already see her. This is Hannah Claus, and I'm super excited to have her back on the webinar. She's actually been a friend of mine for about, I want to say, a couple years now, and she always joins me on these panels. So I love you for always coming back, so thank you so much. And I'm super excited to be continuing to talk with her, and of course, introducing you to her, and then giving you a little bit more of her background. But in the meantime, I wanted to go back over what we discussed last week. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. So today's webinar is going to be all about, let's talk about AI beyond the hype. So this time we're taking it beyond what you see, the buzzwords. We're going way past all of those things and finally have another AI expert on the chat to really talk with us about it and of course answer your questions. So we'll be going into more of that as we go along. But let's do a quick recap of last week. So last week, we talked about ethics in robotics. And we were looking at how when you start to bring AI into the physical world, what are some of the challenges that can arise with that, some of the good use cases as well. And we kind of dove a little bit deeper into that. But we did run out of time. So I wanted to share 2 more questions that I feel like we didn't quite go as deep into as I would have liked. So let's go over some of those first. So who is actually accountable when a robot causes harm or makes a serious mistake? And I feel like we went into it a little bit, but for myself, at least from my opinion, you can also answer this question in the chat as well. For me, who's accountable? I think it's a shared responsibility. Of course, it starts with the developer, the person that makes the robot, the person manufacturing it, to make sure that they try as many use cases as possible, especially edge cases, things that they may not have expected, and to try it in a controlled environment first before putting it out into the world. But then, of course, at a certain level, you have to look at the regulations around it as well. And then on an even smaller level, I would say the user, because I would say maybe not a smaller level, but it depends as well how the robot is being used. And then, of course, the person using it. So that's what I think when it comes to who should be held accountable. But you let me know as well what you think about that one. And then, because we were looking at one use case, for example, with the humanoid robots that have been coming out a lot, some of them are teleoperated. So, you bring them into your home for the convenience of having a home worker, somebody to help you do chores around the house and make your life a little bit easier. But if things like teleoperation or the robot having access to different areas of your house that you may not want them to, it's a camera in your house essentially. So are we trading that privacy for convenience without really, fully realizing it and understanding the repercussions of that? And that's something I would like you to consider as well. So when you're bringing in these robots, you need to really look at what are we giving them permission to do? Where's that data going? And then, of course, as the developer, thinking to yourself, well, how am I training those models? And then am I using the data that people are giving me, or am I finding it in an ethical source way? And of course, that's why I'm glad we have Hannah as well, because she can give her input on this too. I'm just going to check in the chat to say hi to everyone. Angela, thank you for coming back. That's my mom, my sweetie. And Ali, thank you for joining us again. He's joining from Dubai. And Sweetie is joining from Bermuda. Good morning to the Bermuda team. If anyone could keep an eye on the LinkedIn with me, because I don't want to miss out on anyone. Just give me 1 second while I go check in there, in case anyone has said anything. Yeah. Doesn't look like it yet, so we're still good. Okay. So just as a reminder, we do these webinars twice a month here at Tombola Research. So I have my whole schedule here for you. So far this year, we've looked at agentic AI. Last week, we were talking about ethics in robotics. Today, we're talking about women in STEM and going beyond the hype, because today is the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. Hooray, super excited. This is why I wanted to bring Hannah on, because she's another amazing woman in computer science that I wanted to be able to chat with, and of course, give you the opportunity to speak with as well. In the coming weeks, next time that I see you, we'll be talking about world models and understanding, looking at AI that can understand reality, so physics getting into AI. Then we're going to look at AI and robotics in healthcare, and of course, AI in the classroom, which we actually touched on when we talked about agentic AI, because we had a couple teachers in the room as well. So that was a really exciting conversation. And of course, if you want to learn even more about Tombola Research, feel free to look at any of our options here. You can email me at info@tomboloresearch.ai. You can head to our website, tomboloresearch.ai, and of course, our social media. So we're everywhere that you are at Tombolo Research. So if you head to our website, you can learn more about the exciting projects that we're working on. We have our first robotic product launching this summer, and I'm like over the moon about this and would love to share more with you. I can't tell you everything, but I do hope that you'll follow me for the journey for that one. So again, if you want to learn more or even potentially like donate to our cause, you can head to our website, tomboloresearch.ai. Okay. Oh, happy Women's Day. Thank you, Ali. Happy Women's Day, Women and Girls Day at International Science. Amazing. Okay, so today I have one of the, I would consider a heavy hitter in the AI space. This is Hannah Claus. She has been with us before on the Cameron's Lab podcast. We had her for a individual podcast to learn more about her background. And then we also had her as well when we had the virtual women's conference that I hosted about 2 summers ago now. And Hannah is an amazing woman in AI. When I first got introduced to AI, actually, that's when one of my previous professors was like, have you met Hannah? I was like, what? Who is Hannah? So when I first met her, she was doing her master's at Queen Mary in AI. And now she's a PhD researcher at the University of Cambridge. And of course, nobody can do it better justice than Hannah herself. So I'm just going to invite Hannah to now kind of introduce herself to you, tell you more about her research, what she's working on, and just a little bit of her background. So hi, Hannah. Great to have you again.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, I mean, you already did most of it, right? I'm a PhD student here in Cambridge, and I'm working at the Language Technology Lab, and I'm actually situated between linguistics and computer science, and that is kind of the way I would describe my research as well, because I'm really trying to look at, obviously, how can we build large language models, but also how can we make sure that it really represents different languages, different cultures, and different linguistic abilities. So in this case, I'm trying to be very intersectional and focus on various different things, and also make sure that not just English languages and English cultures are represented, but the whole world really. So yeah.
Amazing. Really great work. And I wanted to kind of, I guess, dive a little bit deeper into, I guess, the beginning of your background. Oh, thank you. Let's see the little, I don't know, can you see the chat as well, Hannah, when people
Yeah,
send little comments?
yeah,
Okay, good. That way, in case anyone asks you questions, then you can see them as well. But yeah, I wanted to go back into your background. So I know that you kind of grew up being interested in tech, but could you tell us like what got you into AI? Like where did you start off? And I
yeah.
guess a little bit more of that story.
So, just for general information, I grew up in Germany. I'm half German, half Ethiopian. And when I was in school, there were different courses that you could take. And in my course, they had computer science. That was like back in, I don't know, 2013, which is wild. But yeah, back then I got just interested in computer science in general and just trying to understand what it was because I'd never heard about it before. And I got so deep into it that when I was about 15, there were a few scholarships to go to different universities in Berlin to also learn more about computer science and software engineering. And that was how I was first introduced to generally, how does the world of AI look like, but also in the setting of academia. And I did more of that for years. And then when I finally graduated, I realized, okay, I've done so many basics on computer science, and it felt really interesting because it was you had a problem and you had to find a solution, but there were so many solutions, so how can you find the right one for you? And just the idea of having something to solve really intrigued me. And also just in general all the programming languages. I don't know how many but like I got so obsessed with just collecting all the different programming languages, because it felt like I was learning a new language every single time. And yeah, so that's when I was fully introduced into computer science, but I realized that it wasn't enough. I felt like I needed more. And that was for me AI, because to me, it just felt like AI was one of the next few steps we as society would take in the future. And it seemed that even though it might not be inevitable, right, still it's something that can be explored. And I think I may have watched one too many science fiction movies and I really like that idea. So I went into that and I studied AI and robotics. because also just building something from scratch and seeing it coming to life, basically it felt incredible. um, I worked a bit at the German Aerospace Center for 1.5 years on a robot that was supposed to go to Mars. I don't think it ever went to Mars, but it was still a great project. But I also realized that it was very narrow and it was very slow compared to what we can do in AI because it's so fast paced, right?
Yeah.
So then I went into my master's and I did AI natural language processing. And halfway through my master's, ChatGPT came out. And that was like perfect timing. So now everyone was talking about it, and I kind of got stuck in this. So here I am, still working in AI and NLP.
Mm. I think that's awesome, especially like you mentioning the science fiction movies. 'Cause, we're both like huge Star Wars nerds. Because I think when I first like met you and got to know you a little bit more, we were talking about like C-3PO, and like that was like the first robot that you saw. Was that one of like the inspirations for you as well? Because that was what inspired me,
Yes.
to be honest.
Honestly, if you think about it, like there are so many great robots. Obviously, we always talk about Terminator, but
Mm,
I hate this negative view on all of the
yeah.
technology that we have because, of course, like there are loads of negative side effects. We're currently on a trajectory that doesn't look very positive. But I do think that we can get away from that narrative and make it
Mm,
our own in a more positive way. Because, if we give so many platforms to all the negative sides, we're
mm,
just, it's just self fulfilling prophecy. So I think there's a use in talking about positive aspects of this technology. And in this case, C3PO to me was just the perfect example how you can have a humanoid robot that will help you in general settings, but also I think C3PO can speak 6,000 languages
oh,
within the
yeah.
universe,
Yeah.
which to me was the perfect way to describe how we can merge robotics, AI, and linguistics together.
Mm,
And in a way, that's still my inspiration.
mm. So, speaking of inspiration, is that what inspired you to kind of start merging robotics, AI with language, like language in particular? What made you choose, I guess, language over something like computer vision or some of the other
Yeah.
fields?
I mean, in a way, I felt like I had done a lot in robotics and computer
Mm,
vision already, and I was also a bit in like facial recognition for a while, and I felt like there was still so much to explore. Right, AI is so huge, and there are so many different ways we can apply it in the real world. So I felt like I needed to know everything, and then I went into it, and the languages was just, it was just another thing that I tried and when I went deeper into what it actually means to build language models, I realized that it's so much more personal to me than any of the other areas are because I grew up speaking German and Amharic, which is one of the 80 languages we speak in Ethiopia. And when ChatGPT came out, I tried it in English, it worked well. I tried it in German, it worked well. Then I tried it in Amharic, and it just didn't work at all. Like, I
mm,
think the prompt was something like, oh, what is coffee? And then because coffee is from Ethiopia, and I thought, okay, maybe there will be most data about this. And yeah, the result I got was something about like feathers and heaven
mm,
and
wow.
the sky, and it just didn't make sense. And
Mm,
that's when I realized, okay, if we want this technology, we need to make sure that it actually works for everyone and not just for English.
mm. I 100% agree. Speaking of that, I actually wanted to ask you to go a little bit more into some of the terms that you've used
Oh yeah.
before, like oh my goodness, what is it? The minoritized like languages, and looking at like trying to bring that kind of data into it. Would you mind explaining a little bit more around that as well?
Yeah. So basically, the way large language models are built, uh, it's you take a lot of data, as much data as you can.
Mm,
You train your model, and what it does, it detects patterns in those texts. So then, when you write a prompt, it will calculate all the probabilities of the potential words that would come up based on this prompt. So if I say, "Hi, how are you?" then it will calculate, okay, what is the word with the highest probability that would come here first within this sentence? So maybe also a hi. And that is also based on like Western standards. You wouldn't come with by, you would come with hi, and so on. And that's how you calculate all the probabilities of all the next words.
mm,
And that's basically what an LLM does. And the more data you have, the better your model is, really.
mm,
The only issue is that 50% of the internet's content is in English, but we have over
mm,
7,000 languages in the world. And it would make sense if maybe 50% of the world also spoke English, but that's not the case. So now we have this disparity where we see, okay, there are so many people in this world that don't actually speak English, cannot even read English, and yet we're forcing everyone to learn yet another language in order to access this kind of technology. So that's why I'm actually fighting for smaller language communities to get the resources so they can build their own language models, that this is completely separated from the English versions, so that in the end they can have their own language models that are trained within their own data sets that they created, but also that they have ownership of, in order to embed their cultural context within the language models as well. So it's not just, translating English texts into other languages, but no, it's original data. And that would be a minoritized language model.
That's awesome. I really love that like mission that you have, and I'm amazed that you're on that journey. So can we, I guess, like I'll bring it back a little bit because you went from your master's in AI at Queen Mary. She was a Google DeepMind scholar, by the way. I have to bring that up because it is amazing. So she went from being a Google DeepMind scholar to then the Gates scholar as well, and now I think the Ellis scholar, if I'm not wrong.
It's kind of
Is
at
it
the
the
same
same?
time.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
yeah, Gates from the Gates Foundation, they are currently funding my PhD, and Ellis is a way to connect with other AI labs throughout Europe.
Ah, really,
So
really
yeah,
cool.
two in one basically.
I think that's amazing. And could you
Yeah.
maybe talk about like how those kind of communities and also like opportunities are able to, I guess, shape your confidence and also your research as you go through the AI space? Because it can be quite, I guess, it's a lot to deal with. So like being able to work in such really like high level, amazing research communities must be something fascinating. So I just want to get your opinion on it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely feels daunting.
Mm,
And if you think about it, like I would have never imagined that I would even be in this position right now. Because if you think back, like 10 years ago, if you told me where I would be now, I would have laughed in your face. I would have been like, no way. I think it's a matter of having a support network around you, having people that will support you, will hype you up, that will always see the best in you and help you grow within the space, but also make you sometimes, get out of your comfort zones.
mm,
Because I think it's really easy to find the things that you're good at and then you just stay put. But I think there's so much more to discover in this world and
mm,
there's so much more to do. And like, for example, what you're doing is incredible, right? Like you could have just stayed in academia, for example, you could have just
mm,
done what you already know, but no, now you build Tumblr research and it's like, you probably didn't know how to do that before and now you're doing it and you came out of your comfort zone, and that's what we need to do, and we need to have people around us that will support us in this way where we are not too afraid to take these steps, because these are huge steps and it's there's always a risk attached to it. And
mm,
I mean, when I started, I was the only girl in my computer science class and I
mm,
almost left because I thought, there are 20 boys, all 13, and I was the only girl, and they did not make me feel welcome in that space. There were loads of comments and jokes about me being in the wrong room, and I felt like, is this really something that I want to continue for years just
mm,
because I might be interested in this? And I kept going because, maybe I'm a bit stubborn, but I wanted to show them that actually I can do this. And just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I cannot use a computer. And then I ended up actually, specializing in this space. But also in my bachelor's, I was one of the only women. In my master's, I was one of the only women. And then now in my PhD, we're two women in the entire lab. So it's, yeah, times are changing. I see this now in the newer generations, which is good. But it's still very slow. And I know that at least with my generation of people, there there are so many incredible women out there. They just don't always get the same opportunities because
mm.
people expect that they know less or that they can do less. And I think we need to give more opportunities to women, especially women of color as well, because um, yeah, why not, right? Like, I think we have so much more
Okay.
value to add to this conversation. And yeah, being in this place where I am right now, I'm really trying so hard to fight for this, because you get the same excuses every time, like, oh, we didn't find any. If you had just asked me, I could give you a list of people that I
Yeah.
know that could definitely come here. Yeah, it's a constant conversation for me, and I'm really trying to make the spaces broader for women in AI especially. But yeah, it's not always easy, and you need people around you. So yeah.
I agree. And I think that's one of the things that I really like admire about you, especially, is that you are truly a pioneer in the space, and you're always like finding ways to reach back and bring back the rest of us as well with you. So finding ways to keep elevating us and like growing that community, which I think is especially awesome. And it reminds me very much of like Dr. Joy Bulan-Winnie and Timnit Gebru, because they're always fighting for that kind of sorry, fighting for that equality and making sure that we can be within those spaces. Like I always use this quote because I love it. Like Dr. Joy is always saying, like, if you have a face, then you have a place in the world of AI. And I think that you're definitely one of the people that embody that. So I love that about you. And that's why I always love to talk to you about this kind of thing. So it's really great. And then just really quickly before I ask my next question, I want to kind of remind everyone that you can ask her questions. We have her live. Please feel sure to ask Hannah all kinds of questions that you can think of. I missed some of the quotes in the chat here. So one person said, Shay says, that sci-fi movies really forged this generation scientists, engineers, and like all of STEM. And yeah, I have to completely agree. And then down to Ms. Young from Kick, she's saying that it's a great point, and she loves that there's more inclusion and versus the AI divide. And then, of course, when you were talking about taking that leap of faith, like when you're going into that next confidence space, she was really excited by that as well, which is also really great. So again, don't worry, guys. We can all ask her as many questions as you like because we have her here. So I'm going to go more into, I guess, some of the NLP, like more focus on the NLP side of things. So when we talk about language models starting to like reflect culture and really like bring in culture, what are some of the ways that you see culture? Like, I guess I want to see like both sides of the coin. So on one hand, I feel like sometimes you feel the culture kind of showing up a little bit more, and then sometimes it feels as though it's a bit daunting, I guess, but it feels like the culture can sometimes also be erased. Because if you're not in that data set and you're not in the things that the model trained on, like you said, you had that example of you were trying to use Empiric and it just wasn't understanding it at all. So it's like if you're not in that data set, then you're not really going to show up at all, which is really a bit frightening. So would you mind talking about, I guess, the double sides of the coin? Of the one hand, we're showing up a little bit more, but then also, and the other hand, we're also being erased at the same time. If you could
Yeah.
maybe comment on that as well.
I mean, for me, that's a really important topic within my research as well, because on the one hand, I want to make sure that these technologies are more accessible to everyone out there in the world. But of course, if you think realistically, we can't make it accessible for 7,000 languages. So, on the one hand, you're trying to make it a tool for everyone, but on the other hand, you really have to figure out, okay, there will be some negative sides to this. And am I the bad guy? Is it even my right to do all of this? And at the moment, what I'm really trying to look at is what kind of problems have we been facing so far, and what simple steps can we take in order to improve that? Because you might not be able to fix all of it, but there are small steps. And the comment earlier that I saw about like how we're all shaped by science fiction, that is so true, because everyone kind of has that background as well. I think you'll see it everywhere. But also, what I'm seeing right now is that most of the inspiration that we get is unfortunately coming from the negative images we get from science fiction, right? Like Terminator, like it's always this doomsday scenario that we're seeing in connection to AI and also like language models. But science fiction has so many more applications, so many more ideas that are also positive. And I think we could focus on that as well, and maybe try and figure out how, for example, in those stories, people have been trying to keep cultures alive. Because what I'm seeing right now is I'm working with smaller language communities that are even spoken only. So they don't even have any script, they don't have an orthography. And the question is, how can you keep their language and their culture alive? Do they even want this? I think that's the main question. Like, it's not my right to just waltz into a community and say, hey, I've got this great AI product for you. Please use it, or I will do everything for you. That's not my right to say. I think the first question to ask is, hey, do you want this? And in order for them to actually make a decision about this, they need to know about this technology. So first, we have to improve AI literacy all over the world, but that comes with improving technology access in the first place. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really make any difference if you go into, let's say, a tribe that actually lives in like in a very rural area. They don't have any internet connection, and you come in and tell them about AI. What is the point really? Do they need AI in this case? Probably not. And what right is it of me to just then say, oh no, but I want to save your culture, I want to save your language? And they're like, no, we're fine actually. So I think it's a very fine line to draw, and you have to navigate it, but by knowing some of the ethics, some of the ways to talk to different communities that isn't just on the very statistical side of it. And yeah, the first part is just having a conversation first and seeing what people want. That is really it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think that actually, I did an interview, I think a couple years ago now, with Professor Adanaya Huard. She was talking about how basically she works with a company based out of Switzerland, and they look at building the infrastructure in Africa, for
Mm.
example. And she was talking about how, like, one of the quotes that I love from her was, "We're looking for trade, not aid." And it was like, we
Mm.
don't need you to
Yeah.
like come in and fix things. We want you to like work with us to do things, which is why I'm excited by that approach of like working with people to be able to like understand the like what is AI, the AI literacy side of things, but then also ensuring they have the infrastructure to actually implement something like that. Because once they're using it, they actually need to be able to use it the same way that we do in a fluid kind of way. So I think that that's really
Exactly.
important.
And like, I think my role is only to like help out if they need me, and to
Right.
give my resources that I might have that they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a savior. I'm not gonna come in and say, oh, let me save all. It's more a matter of collaborating on this issue, because also if it's, for example, not even my language, not even my culture, then I can't really make decisions about it, right? It is the language community's right to do that. So for me, it's really about finding the people, asking these questions, having a conversation, and finding a way where we can exchange ideas, where we can exchange our resources, where I can bring something in it and they can give me something too. And just, also finding new solutions for problems, because so far we've only used the solutions that we've seen in the West mainly. But there's so much out there in the world, and maybe there are people that have completely other ways of thinking and finding solutions, and we're just not listening to them.
Okay. I think we have actually quite a few comments in here, so I'm going to pause my questions and go back to what people were saying. So I guess taking us a little bit back, so we had from Miss Young. She said, Hannah, what advice do you have for parents to encourage their children to use AI, but they seem ignorant of its impact? Like, how do the parents achieve that kind of balance of bringing it in?
That's a really good question, because I think it's something that researchers, at least here in Cambridge as well, are also working on right now. Because the thing is, the younger generation seems to adapt to technology faster than older people. And for example, if you go into a school setting, I remember in my school they had just set up those projector boards, so it wasn't blackboards anymore that we had at school, but
Yeah.
projectors, which meant that you didn't use chalk anymore. You used like a pen that would connect to the projector and so on. And most of the teachers were over 50 years old, which meant that they never got the training for any of these technologies. But also there wasn't enough resources to actually teach those teachers how to use these new technologies. So they would come into the room, and then they would ask the first student to set it up for them so they could use it. And to me, this is again happening, but with the use of AI, where teachers are not being taught how to properly use it, how to properly look at it, so that the children will use it properly too. And I think the same thing is happening with parents too, because parents are busy, they have their work, they need to take care of the household. Um, Life is hard, really. So, and then you have to teach yourself how to use AI as well, and how to know where all the traps are, and like what to look out for, what happens to your child's data, and so on. And then you have your child that has it all figured out, but maybe doesn't isn't really um, mature enough to think about certain risks like data privacy and so on, because, well, it's a child. So in this case, I think the best thing to do is you as a parent need to figure things out for yourself first and realize what the risks are. It will take time. You have to read a lot, but if you want your child to be safe, you have to do it first, because it's almost as if you're giving a matchbox to your child and like, well, play around with it. It's going to create a fire, but the child doesn't. So in this case, I think it's really important to have a conversation with your child, talk about the risks, talk about how you can prevent that and how the child can use it in a safe way and doesn't depend on it fully, because I think it's really easy nowadays to depend on it to the point where you'll use it 24/7. It's a therapist, it's a best friend, it's your math teacher, it's so many different things. And it might actually become your parent too. So it's a you need to have a conversation. But it's a very important question, because I don't think there's any right way or wrong way at the moment.
100%. I like how you said like the kids have it all figured out, but I definitely felt the air quotes around that, because the parents need to be there to give them that extra guidance to be able to push them
Exactly.
even further forward. So I
Yeah.
have a couple of comments coming in here as well. So back to what we were talking about before with like smaller communities. Cheyenne said, I really like that smaller communities are receiving the support and guidance to show them how to build AI that can be trained on their languages that aren't trained by the AI giants. So yeah, I think that that's an amazing part of your work as well.
Yeah,
And then I had
that's
another,
the main
sorry, go ahead.
focus. Because I think, I don't know, I think Europe is a bit snobbish and a bit ignorant when it comes to the rest of the world, because they think, oh, they're so superior. But actually, there's so much happening in the world, right? And we don't actually need the support of Europe or the West in general. I think we can do it on our own. It's just a matter of coming together and realizing that we have other options. There are alternative options. And if you realize that your language isn't fully represented in those large language models, well, then build your own, because they're not going to do it for you. And if they offer it, they're going to sell it back to you. So you have to
Mm,
pay for something that, you know, you should have built in the first place. So they're not going to respect your culture. They're not going to respect your language. So in order to have the good representation, you need to do it yourself.
mm,
That's right.
maybe. Sorry, I was looking for some comments I saw on LinkedIn, but they both seem to have disappeared. I took a screenshot though, so I got one of them. Technology, great when it works.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is from Balvinder. She said, "Hi, Hannah and Cameron. Absolutely love the discussion on using AI to preserve disappearing languages if wanted. And I have a more technical question. How would training data be collected for languages that would only have that would have only a small tribe of people speaking, and how would this account for different dialects?"
Yeah, that's a very good question. So part of my PhD is focusing on exactly that thing, because imagine, so you have a language that does not have any representation on the internet whatsoever. How do you start there? Because right now we have the luxury that so much is available online, and then you go to a language that doesn't have anything. So what we're doing is we are talking to the community. Now it's a language community in Nepal, very small. They have 3,000 speakers, and it's completely oral. So we work together with a linguist to create an orthography to write the language in a phonetic way. So basically, um, just for example, my name Hannah would be Hana. So two letters that would be, for example, um, no, that would be for Amharic. But if you go into like Zazonke, that is the language that is spoken in that tiny village in Nepal. You would really try to write it down in a way where it would be easily read in English, because some of the people there know how to speak English, so they would be able to see that this is the alphabet. And what we're doing right now is we built an app to teach them how to read and write their own language. And then once we get to that point, they can then collect data with us, whether it's linguistic data in a text version or also voice data. So we can use it because obviously it's an oral language. And then once we get to that point, we can hopefully use that data within a smaller language model and see if we can train it in a way where then it can be used for disaster response applications or medical applications, because not not everyone knows English and not everyone can read it either. So if there is a way to make it more accessible and to actually have a purpose behind what we're doing, so it's not just, oh, we want to build AI. No, it's actually we are building this language model so we can embed it within uh, an application that will then help people in certain circumstances. And the dialects, that's a really hard question because there's so many, and the smaller you go in different languages. So I'm also working on a language in Peru that's called Quechua, and there are 7 million people speaking this
Wow.
language, but there are so many dialects that actually you can't say that 7 million people are speaking this language because the the people from this place wouldn't understand what the other people are saying in this place, but it's still the same language. So we're trying to test it out, get as much data as possible, and just make sure that even bits of pieces of this language and culture are embedded within those language models.
I think that's exciting. Mr. Fresh says, Salamte salam, salamta salam, he says. And yeah, truth be told, the facts, we must build it for ourselves. So I completely agree. We have to build it for ourselves. And then just another question I had, like kind of going on with this. Um, when you start working with people, especially if it's, such a language can be a really personal thing, like a very, like, you have that emotional attachment to different languages and the way that we interact with each other and the way that we speak with each other. I guess, how do you handle that side of things when you start bringing in, AI and the technology side of things for the smaller communities? How do you deal with the emotional impact that it might have as well?
Yeah, that's. I think this is something that I keep thinking about every day because to me, language is not just words, right? It's so much more. It's where you're from, it's how you grew up, it's the people around you, it's culture, it's identity, it's your worldview, it's all of that together. And that means that if you want to build a language model that actually represents all of that, you have to embed it within that space where you want it to be. And because it's so personal, especially if people don't really have an understanding of how AI works as well, because for me, AI is very simple. It's very technical. I look at it and I see statistics and probabilities, and I can calculate my way through it. That's fine. But not everyone thinks that way, and not everyone sees it that way. And then when it tells you something where, let's say, you ask religious questions or medical questions, and it will give you an answer that you might not agree with, or that is just wrong, or whatever, then how do you make sure that it changes that? Who's held accountable in this space as well? If mistakes happen, I think what you mentioned earlier within your robotics webinar that you did, this is the biggest question: who is held accountable if something happens? There have been a lot of cases where people have been harmed because of the use of language models, and that is just in English. Now imagine this happening in other languages that are just not working well at the moment, and then just because your data set is bad, but you use it anyway. Now, if you ask, oh, what can I do? I've got a cough, and then I will tell you, oh, drink acid. Then, wow, then who is at fault here? Is it the person that drank the acid, or is it the LLM that said it? Is it the developer? And what do you do if it's been multiple people working on this? So these are very important questions, and I think the emotional part of it makes it so very human. And that's when you realize this is not just a question that tech people can answer. This is a question that needs to be answered with tech people at the table, with humanities people at the table, and with the people that are going to use this at the table too. And we need to build these places because they don't really exist yet.
Completely agree. I think I especially love the dimension of like that need for this interdisciplinary collaboration. Because I feel like, especially when you're growing up, you're always told, oh, you'll just find other people that will work with you from these different areas. But at the
They
same
will
time, you
solve
also
it.
need, yeah, you need to
Yeah.
have a little bit of that, at least the understanding to know who to ask, like which disciplines, like at a very at a basic level, like who can I talk to about these kind of things. Which is why it's
Yeah.
important for us to, like you said, build those places where we can collaborate and talk with each other. Have
Yeah.
you, I guess, been a part of any places like that so far? And is there anyone you could recommend, like places that we
Yeah.
can maybe check out?
So I figured that when I finished my master's, I think I had done, I mean, 4 years of official university, but I think at that point it was almost 10 years of university. in the space of computer science and AI. And I realized that all those lectures and all those years, no one ever mentioned ethics. No one ever mentioned humans. And I was, I was in AI, I was in computer science and robotics. No one ever mentioned the user. And it was really frightening because I realized that if I am supposed to build these technologies, but I never think about what impact this will have on the actual person that is going to use it, then how can I maybe improve that so it is built for these people, and for myself, because I know I'm not part of the data set, right? Like, I'm a woman. What? A woman of color, even worse. They don't have me in the data set, so I have to do it for myself and for people like me. So I saw the Ada Lovelace Institute here in London. They focus on uh, AI and the social impact it has on different communities. And that's when I first learned about like policy, regulations, ethics, and so on. And it was new territory for me. And I think when I applied, they were like, "Why did you apply?" Because they were looking for humanities people. And I was like, "Well, you're in a research institute that looks at AI. How come you don't have any technical person there?" So I became like a walking encyclopedia for AI for them. And it was incredible because I learned so much. And now every time I think about a new problem, I try to look at it from a technical side, but also from a social side. And that is a skill that I have the privilege to learn just because I got out of my comfort zone and really fought my way through these new spaces where I didn't know anything. Obviously, I'm aware that not everyone has that kind of luxury, and there are not really that many opportunities out there. So if you find any research institutes that are already interdisciplinary, maybe approach them and say, "Hey, I have a computer science background. I want to learn more about yours, like your research area, and maybe I can help you learn more about computer science and like AI, for example." So this is one thing that is now happening here in Cambridge. We started the Center for Human Inspired AI, where it's literally about anything that is connected to AI, from any kind of sector. So it doesn't matter whether it's medicine, whether it's economics, whether it's ethics, everything. And it's been so interesting because you realize that AI goes into every single area within our lives, and we are not talking about this enough because it's too fast. We're not catching up, and I think we might have to slow down a bit so that we can actually look at the overall problems and fix them.
I agree. I think that's amazing. Just checking really quickly on the LinkedIn in case I've missed anyone. No? Okay, we did have one quite a technical question, I would say, if you don't mind answering one of those for today. So Himanshu asked a NLP AI question. He said, "Can monosemantic representations emerge in deep transformer models that perform multi-step reasoning, or is feature superposition a necessary computational property for scalable inference?" So it was a technical question. I figured I would ask it. Feel free to say, let's save that for another day, but whichever.
I mean, I would love to go deeper into those technical questions, but honestly, I have to admit, like, I have been so much focused on like the different social aspects that now this question, I would have to read up on that actually.
So
So
fair enough.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you. So, okay, back to where we were, because I was really enjoying that conversation. And of course, everyone, make sure you remember that you can jump in as well if you feel like there's something we're saying and you want to bring in your opinion too. Like, we're making this really an open conversation, so I'd be happy if you just even comment like a "Yep, I agree," or a just whatever you're thinking, so we can kind of talk about it all together. Okay, we have Shayan here. He says AI shines when interdisciplinary with medicine and real ethical issues that matter to people. Too often now, it's just hype and corporate profits and not addressing human needs like accessible healthcare. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, the better part of it, especially what you were saying, is bringing in that interdisciplinary, not only teams, but also like the mindset that you have when you're building these kind of systems as well. It can be really important because if you're just focused on the techie side of things, it can really throw you off. I was in a club society, I should say, for my previous university, and it was looking at a high speed train, like the magnet train, and I was on the biomedical team. And whenever I brought up like, there's people inside of that train, they'd be like, like, like we just need it to go faster. So it seems to be a problem across like all the different like kind of tech engineering disciplines, and we really need to remember that there's people at the end of the day that's going to be using these systems and interacting with them, and they're the ones that's going to be really impacted by it. So I completely agree with you, Hannah. Bringing in that interdisciplinary mindset is going to be really important when building the next, I guess, generation of systems, or even the current ones that we have.
I think also what I see in my day to day life is that usually the tech people then, as soon as you ask these kinds of questions or challenge them on their views, then they're like, oh no, but other people will take care of this. Like their job is only building the technology, and then you give it to the rest of the world and they have to figure it out for themselves. And I think that is such a problematic view because in the end, you are the responsible person and no one's going to use it if you build it in a way where it's not useful to anyone, right?
Yeah.
And you want it to be useful because why else are we building this? But I think there's such a hype. And going back to like the general theme of this, right? Beyond the hype, what comes after it? Because right now we're all racing to get to this version of AGI that some people in Silicon Valley have created for themselves. The thing is, there's no proper definition of it. They can choose what they want as AGI, and once they get to it, what happens afterwards? Like, why is AI the finish line here and not just a means to an end to build applications that will actually help people, that will actually make our lives easier and better? Because right now, what I'm seeing is, oh, we have to get the model accuracy out. We have to, improve this and this and this and this, but only in the technical space and not actually in the real world. So I think we have to focus more on real world applications and trying to make these model work in a setting that isn't just a lab.
Completely agree. And I think especially what you said there about they just keep, passing that baton, I guess, onwards of like, oh yeah, somebody else will solve it for us or somebody else will look at that part of things. But then it's like, who is at the end of that finish line? Like if the baton keeps getting passed, when will we actually like catch it and take a look at it? So yeah, definitely. Just one question in the chat here. I have a question. What would be the best way to gather the resources and tools for people that can't use AI to its full capabilities, and especially for communities that can benefit from it the most?
Mm. So the way I'm doing it is I'm seeing that obviously I have certain like expertise, experience, and so on in this one very niche area, right? And then you find other people that have their expertise and their resources in the other area, and then you kind of create a group of people, and hopefully, if you're talking about a specific like language community, in this case, for example, then you need to have someone from there as well, and then you just talk about okay, what is actually needed, what kind of resources do you need? What kind of training is needed, for example? Because also, what's very important to me is the fact that if I share something, I want this to be maintained throughout the next few years. Like, I don't want to always come in and say, oh, this is how you do it. No, I want people to learn it for themselves so they can be independent in the future. Because I think that's the main thing, right? Like, I think there's this saying, at least in German, where, it's better to give people what is it, the crops and not just the bread, so they can make the bread themselves at some point. And here it's the same thing. Instead of bringing people the fully fleshed out AI system, it's better to give them the resources, and that might be people, that might be money, that might be computing, that might be data centers and so on. But there are different fundraisers happening. There are different communities that are looking for support in this case. Masakane is, for example, a huge group that is focused on like African language models. And in this case, there are loads of people that want to work together on this. And then you just share your expertise in a way where everyone is benefiting from it so that you can build something together.
That's
I
awesome.
hope that was somewhat comprehensible.
That was great. Okay, so I guess I think you kind of touched on this, but I wanted to ask it more specifically. So I guess apart from language, what are some other access gaps that you see in terms of like whether that be infrastructure or education or like something else? What are some of the gaps that you see other than like just getting access to language?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it from a global perspective, there are gaps everywhere, right? Because I think there's no community that has it all. Uh, Even in the West, like some people are struggling because it's not accessible in a way for people with disabilities, for example. Um, when you look at the education, sure, when ChatGPT came out, they just released it online and they were like, oh, here you go. But we are not going to tell you what kind of data we use. We're not going to tell you how we trained it. We're not going to tell you how to properly use it. And people had to figure it out for themselves. And of course, now, like, some time has passed and people have tried to figure it out for themselves. But if you're not a technology person, then you won't have the same kind of knowledge and expertise to really look deeper into it. So I think in this case, it's very important that we work on education, uh, not just in AI, but general digital literacy, just using the internet and so on, having internet access. Because we keep talking about how AI is going to change the world when in so many places people don't even have a proper internet connection or electricity. So I think that's something that we have to fix first, if they want this, obviously. But then when it comes to infrastructure, as you mentioned, there are so many multiple steps that lead towards understanding AI and LLMs better, for example, where it's not just, okay, here you go, here's an AI model, but actually, what can you do with it within your community, within your society, to improve all the problems that you currently have to solve them in a way where it actually benefits you and not the big tech companies and not some other person. So I think we really have to look into how we can use what we're building at the moment for us with a purpose, where it's not just, building an AI agent that reads all your emails because, yeah, okay, you can read them too. It's more about how can you maybe use it where it's going to help you in a hospital. It's going to help you with children. It's going to help you when there's a new, I don't know, earthquake happening. All of these things, basically. Um, but yeah, so it's not easy, and also, the people with money, they're not actually interested in this, so it's kind of hard to do.
I think it's great. Well, great opinion you have. And what I wanted to ask you next was to be more about, I guess, continuing our look beyond the hype. I feel like there might be some kind of like mismatches really between some of the problems or the issues that more like big companies would say that we have with AI. Like there's their list, and then there's what the communities actually feel is the mismatch between like AI and what's currently available. What would
Yeah.
you say would be some of those mismatches that you've noticed? And then, yeah, like how are you working to address them with your
Yeah.
research?
I mean, most of the big tech companies, they focus very much on money and being the first one in this race because it is a race. And there's actually a very good book that just came out last year. It's called Empire of AI by Karen Howe. It's really, it goes into the politics behind open AI and basically how we're not actually working towards a human goal, we're working towards a money goal. Um, and this AGI goal. And when it comes to values, the question is who gets to decide what values are right and wrong, and who are you asking? Because everyone you meet has different values, and depending on your culture, where you come from, the language, your worldview, your values are going to change. And how are you going to embed this in a system that is mainly trained on Western knowledge? You can't. And that's why you need smaller models that, sorry, are more focused on diverse values as well. But you have to make sure that they don't just depict stereotypes because it's very easy to just say, oh, Bermudan people do this and this and this, and oh, Ethiopian people do this and this and this. How do you know? Have you asked that person before? And just because you've met one Bermudan people person doesn't mean that everyone does that. So I think it's very important that you include a huge group of people in this process, that you make sure that someone checks it. Someone has to evaluate that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend reading that book.
I've already added it to my Amazon cart, so I'm glad that you
Yeah,
said that. Now I have an excuse to go
I'm
through with the
still
book.
reading it, so we can definitely chat after.
Now I have an excuse. Okay, Ali had a quick question. He said, I was wondering about something related to LLMs being able to think. As Hannah said in the beginning, the LLMs learn to generate text by training them on massive amounts of text. What about reasoning? Now we can see almost all LLMs have reasoning abilities and they can solve like math problems. But what happens when you ask questions about the book or the data that they give a convincing reasoning, but the answer is often incorrect? So I guess if you can give your answer to that kind of question.
Yeah, so that is a very common problem at the moment because we want to understand how these models work because we don't. We can't look inside and see. That's the common black box problem, and that's why we have reasoning. The only issue with reasoning is that it's also generated text. So if you give it a specific prompt, it will know what you want to see. And just because it just generated a text of reasoning doesn't mean that it actually thinks that way or operates that way. And I've seen this example in different scenarios, whether it's, for example, autonomous cars, where you sit there and it will turn right, and then you'll ask, why did you turn right, and it will give you an answer. But is that actually the reason why it turned right, or was it just thinking, oh, you wanted to turn right and that's why it turned right? So right now, when it comes to reasoning, there's not enough information on why we get these kinds of texts. And yeah, the answer can be incorrect and the reasoning can look great because they're not connected always. And I've seen this a lot where you would ask, oh, can you build this kind of weapon for me? And it will start reasoning and it will start, okay, this is step one, this is step two, and then at the end of it, it's like, oh, actually, I'm not allowed to tell you this. And then the answer that you get is, I'm not allowed to tell you this, but in the step
You
you
can do
have how to build the weapon. And that is quite problematic. So we're still trying to figure things out. But yeah, I would not rely on any of the answers that you get from AI generated text. Always double check. Always make sure that you look into the sources. And if you can, just Google it.
Hmm.
Really. I think that will save so much more energy.
Yeah.
And you get to choose what is right and what is wrong for
Hmm.
yourself.
100%. I guess I'll go to the next comment, which was all about that they said that they love that OpenAI kind of kicked off this modern AI era, but since going mega commercial and secretive with their LLM models, they've totally backtracked on the open source promise that's literally in their name. So it's like OpenAI isn't really open source AI anymore. I would say, what would you say would be the impact of the difference between open source models versus like the closed source models, and then how does that impact your own research, like going into these different communities?
Yeah, wait, I'm just answering the question. The book was called Empire of AI.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I fully agree. Open AI was never really open. And when you read the book, it actually goes into how OpenAI was created. And I'll never forget, literally, I think it's chapter 2, when it starts out describing all the conversations that were had in order to create OpenAI. And they were discussing why they were calling it OpenAI, because they wanted to be the opposite of Google. They wanted to be the opposite of DeepMind, for example, because they wanted to show what they're doing and they wanted to be transparent. That was the first goal. But then they realized actually there's so much money in the very thing that they're building. And if they make it open source, they lose all that money. And so they stopped doing it. And they they never got back on any of this. And honestly, when you look at the founding team of OpenAI, which was Sam Altman and Elon Musk and so on, and it was also backed by Peter Thiel, and I think the other people in that group were also already a bit conservative, right wing, whatever. You see that these are the people that get to shape technology of today, and they get to shape where we're going, what decisions we make, what values are part of these technologies. So that's why I'm saying don't rely on it, because it's probably not here to actually help you. It's here so they can say, oh, we built the first AGI. And yeah, just be careful and read the book. It's definitely great.
Actually, I got a little the book. I made a little slide in case anybody's looking for it. It's called Empire of AI by Karen Howe, and this is what the cover usually looks like. So in case you're looking for it, this is what you should be
Yeah.
trying to look out for. Ah, I'm just reading some of the comments. A little bit funny. I won't put that one out there. Okay, so we said, do this one. Hmm. I guess it's, continue with the questions, everyone. If anyone has anything else they wanted to ask Hannah, I think this conversation is like really exciting. Like, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm having a really great time, and I love your opinion, especially looking at going beyond the hype. We are really going beyond the hype, which is really exciting and good. Oh, Okay, somebody said OpenAI's founding team was such a mess after commercialization, and even now thinking about Mira Muradi's thinking labs, it's all kind
It's
of crazy. So it's a lot
Yeah,
going on.
it is. It is so crazy. And if you think about how they poached people from different companies so they can have the best of the best people in their company, and then only for them to, I think, they fired Sam Altman without any notice whatsoever. And then they got him back because he was OpenAI. He was the face of it. And they knew that if he left, he would take his whole team with him, and they were left with nothing. So it's so much politics within the techno space. And that makes it even more dangerous because you realize actually the whole point of this technology is not actually for us humans. It's for a few billionaires to make even more money and get even more power.
Wow. Well, I enjoyed the webinar so much. I did not realize we were out of time. So thank you so much, Hannah, for your time. I'm just going to put up our little slide here. Thank you so much for your time. I don't know everyone else. I had an amazing time listening to your questions and especially getting to really pull on your expertise and your experiences thus far in the space. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share with us and I guess continue to chat with us. And we're going to be continuing to follow your journey here on Tumbola Research. And to everyone else, thank you all so much for joining me here on the Tumbola Research webinar series. So as I mentioned, we are continuing to do this twice a month. So the next time that I see you, we'll be talking about world models. So that's when we're starting to bring the real world into AI, so looking at the physical side of things and bringing in like, how does the AI understand the world using more physics and simulation? So that's going to be a really interesting discussion. And if you want to follow along and learn even more, please head to our website, tombolaresearch.ai, which is where I usually post all the replays. And you can also sign up for the upcoming workshops and webinars. And if you have any questions at all or want to learn more, please head to my email, info@tombolaresearch.ai, to learn more about what we do. So at Tombola Research, we are an AI and robotics company, a new startup. And our first product is going to be launching this summer. As I mentioned, I can't tell you too much about it, but I do hope that you will join us for the journey as we continue on with our own research and trying to be ethical as well. And people are asking for a part two of you, Hannah. Like I can't even finish my last little sentence. Oh, we had one more question. Somebody said, please bring the question like, how do you see AI employment? Sorry, how do you see employment trends for AI specialists? Sorry, that'll be our last question, and then you guys have to wait till next week for the next one.
Uh,
They said
Employment trends for AI specialists. Ooh. You know what? You have your AI expertise, but now try and go out and get some other expertise where it's more interdisciplinary because that's going to help you. Because AI is not going to be tech anymore, and I think it's oversaturated, and there are too many people that are just focusing on the tech. So if you can learn any other area within AI as well, go for that. Mix it with biology, mix it with medicine, mix it with humanities, mix it with, I don't know, languages, because that's the kind of expertise that we're going to need.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have to do a part two, so we'll have to ask Hannah what her schedule is so we can bring her back onto the webinars. But thank you all so much for joining us, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.